and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 7, Episode 13, The Seven. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm doing well. I am, just trucking along this December, trying to get things ready for Christmas and all the fun that comes along with it. I keep it pretty low key, honestly, in the effort to not stress myself out too much. So as far as shopping goes and all that kind of stuff, we do it simple. My mom is coming into town, so I'm excited for that, and we'll just have a good old time with her. And yeah, that's pretty low key, pretty much what's going on with me. I decided to include a newer segment. Now, I don't know if it'll be every episode, but if I have something that will fulfill this segment of the podcast, I will bring it up. And I'm calling the segment Seinfeld IRL. And for you old ass people out there who don't know what IRL means, it's in real life. I just realized I could be showing how old I am because I don't even know if people use that anymore. But I'm using it for this segment, Seinfeld IRL. And I had an incident, get ready, I'm mentioning the gym, at the gym last week in my yoga class. And there's this gentleman who is a bit on the older side. And he's very friendly. I always see him talking to everyone in the class. He hugs everyone. He's very, very friendly and seems harmless. Well, he introduced himself to me probably a couple of weeks ago now. And his name is Mike. And so I introduced myself and he's like, oh, okay. I'll have to work on that one because, I have a not so typical name. Well, the next time I saw him a week later in class and I enter the yoga studio and he looks at me and he kind of puts his hands up and he's like, Shivasta. And I said, actually, it's Shivani. And he's like, oh, gosh, sorry, And I said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I don't really get offended if people don't remember my name or don't say it correctly. I just correct them and move on. So then at the end of the class, when I'm kind of packing up my stuff, he's chatting with a guy that's a couple spots down from me. And he looks at me again and he's like, oh gosh. And I said, Shivani. And he's like, Shivani, okay. I need to figure out a way to remember that. Well, I gave him a little bit of a hint. I've been doing this for like over 40 years, so I know how to help people. And I said, well, if you're familiar with the name Giovanni, it's similar to that. It's just Shivani. And then the man he's talking to, who is on the older side as well, he looks at me and he's like, so are you sure it's not Siobhan and you go by Shivani? Literally, like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, no, it's Shivani. It was so odd. Who says that? Are you sure about your name? How about we don't mansplain someone's name to their face? I said, no, it's not Siobhan. I know I look Irish, but I'm not. It's Shivani, a 100% Indian name, which I am. Anyway, I just said I don't get offended, but I'm not offended at the fact that the man who said this, I don't know. This was between me and Mike, the whole name thing. And then this guy chimed in with his, are you sure though? You sure it's not Siobhan and you just go by Shivani? So anyway, that was my Seinfeld IRL moment. It was amazing. I just can imagine. I mean, when I say Seinfeld, I say it could even happen in Curb. I feel like this would happen in Curb where maybe Larry, someone's like, well, you go by Larry, but your name's actually Lawrence. So I'm going to call you Lawrence. And what the hell? My name is Larry. I want to go by Larry. It's up to me. It's not up to you. Like whatever it is. I just feel this could have been a situation in either Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm. Other than that, I have something on my notes here. I really don't feel like bringing it up right now because I'm feeling it hard today. And I'm just being vulnerable. But I just feel like ever since I turned the big 4-5 this past September, I just feel like my aging has like fast forwarded a little bit. I'm hoping it's mostly in my head. Most of the time, these types of feelings, I think we can all agree, are in our head and we convince ourselves. But I've just like my skin's been acting out in weird ways. I have these like weird dry patches that I've never had before. I just feel like I look kind of tired. I feel okay, but I don't know. I just feel like whenever I look in the mirror, there's something going on and I'm like, oh God, it's happening. Like, not that I didn't see signs of aging prior to this, but it just feels like in the last 2 months, almost like 2.5 months, there's been a fast forward effect, or there's just been a lot of things popping up on my body that I'm like, wait, no, isn't this supposed to happen gradually? So anyway, there's been a lot of marketing on my phone because it's really freaky. I really haven't said this out loud very much. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like my face looks really tired or older or whatever. Yet I keep getting on my feeds just everything that like, oh, tired looking eyes, try these eye masks and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, it could just be a function of the algorithms knowing my age and everything, but man, it was really targeted. And usually, I mean, I will peruse. I'm a human being. Of course, I'm affected by the emotions of getting older and seeing it in the mirror every morning and kind of getting bummed out about that. So I've been a little bit, I will say that aging, like anti-aging products or procedures or whatever it is that has been showing up on my reels on my phone, they're kind of getting through. I'm not going to lie. It's sinking in a little bit more than it has in the past. And I just need to change my mindset about it. Look, I mean, I've been very open about how I cannot stand how we are all programmed to hate ourselves as we get older more and more, hate everything about aging, tell ourselves that we're less desirable or attractive or all that shit. And all that messaging has been really perpetuated on us, especially my generation, since we were young, and I've always been very stubborn about that and not wanting to, I guess I really always wanted to just rise above that. But look, I'm human, like I said, believe it or not. And I am affected. I don't like to admit it. Like I said, I wanted to rise above this, and it doesn't mean that I won't eventually, but it's just these new things happening in the last couple months that have just jarred me a little bit, because I'm like, I was looking at my like photos of myself from like 6 months ago, and I feel like I look, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I feel like I look 5 to 10 years younger in those pictures. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? At any rate, the anti-aging marketing is getting through to me. I just hope I don't, have a weak moment and order a bunch of whatever turmeric paste creams and every eye mask. And then this whole thing, like, oh God, this mushroom coffee. I don't know if any of you have heard of this Rise mushroom coffee. It's like coffee made of only mushrooms, and it's supposed to be just this revolutionary thing to cut inflammatory symptoms, and it'll make you feel so much younger. I mean, that has been like every day I probably see it like 17 or 18 times. I'm not even kidding. And I even tried to mute it. I don't know. It just still keeps getting through. And another big reason, I clicked on it. I wanted to know a little bit more. I said, hey, I think I could maybe benefit from this. Well, first of all, the reviews say it tastes disgusting, which it looks disgusting. So I'm like, I don't think I could do it. But also, one of the mushrooms they use is called cordyceps. Now, if any of you are familiar with either the video game or the series The Last of Us, cordyceps is the mutated mushroom or fungus that makes everyone go insane and turn into zombies or creatures or whatever the hell they turn into in The Last of Us. So I was like, hell no. I've watched The Last of Us, so pass. But anyway, I'm sick of seeing that stupid advertisement, and I've tried to get it off of my feed, but just hasn't worked. All right, let's move on. Enough of me complaining about my face. Let's move on to this episode. The synopsis for The Seven is as follows. George wants to name his first child Seven, then freaks out when Susan's pregnant friend steals the name. It's not a friend, it's a cousin. Terrible synopsis writer. Jerry's new girlfriend always wears the same dress. Elaine promises to give Kramer her new bike if he can fix her stiff neck. Newman is brought in to arbitrate when Elaine reneges on the deal after Kramer's treatment succeeds. Kramer begins to account for the things he takes from Jerry's apartment. This episode was written by Alec Berg and Jeff Schaefer. Okay, we start out in an antique store. Elaine and Jerry are shopping, and Jerry's looking around. He misses the days when they made toys that could kill a kid. Great line. Elaine sees a bike and freaks out. Look at that! And Jerry's looking in the same direction, except at a woman that's standing next to the bike. He's like, yeah, I'm right there with you. That is a Schwinn Stingray, and it's the girl's model. Oh, Elaine always wanted one of those when she was a kid. What do you think, Jer? Jerry's still just distracted by this woman. Jerry, what do you think? He's like, oh yeah, it'll be great for your paper route. She's like, I love it. I'm getting it. Elaine asks for Jerry to help her get it down from this kind of higher shelf. The woman that he's been eyeing says, I think your friend needs some help over there. He says, oh, the only way to really help her is to let her be. Elaine tries to get it down herself, falls backwards onto the floor with the bike on top of her. She rings the bell. Hey! The actress who plays the woman who Jerry is so attracted to is Lisa Deanne Young. The character's name is Christy. She's also appeared in Beverly Hills 90210 and Just Shoot Me. She doesn't seem to be acting anymore, but in my research, I found out that she is heavily involved in the pet shelters across LA. It was really cool to read about that, and that's clearly what she's dedicated her life to. And I totally respect her work for animals in need, but she is definitely one of my least favorite Jerry girlfriends. Look, as usual, the girlfriend characters are written pretty flat. There's not much to Christy at all by way of the script, but wow, I mean, even less with Lisa Deanne Young's performance. My take on this scene, it's fine. You know, we're setting up a couple of the plots, Jerry and Christy and Elaine and the bike. And we see Jerry's true nature here, just selfish, unhelpful in all respects. Yeah, the scene is okay. There's really not much to say about it. All right, next we're in a restaurant. George and Susan are having dinner with her pregnant cousin and husband, Carrie and Ken. George is wondering how he's going to be related to the baby she's pregnant with. You and Susan are first cousins, so what does that make me? And Carrie says, that doesn't make you anything. All right, so legally I can marry your daughter. Oh, God. So awkward and gross to say. And speaking of gross, I mean, he's eating his food. Like in the most disgusting way. Susan asks if they've picked out any names. Well, we've narrowed it down to a few. So she says, Kimberly. Oh, boy. George doesn't like that. He says, what else you got? Joan? Come on, I'm eating here. Susan's like, George, Pamela? Ugh, George doesn't like that one too. But he says, look, you're nice people. I'm going to help you out. Soda. What? He says, soda. Carrie says, I don't know. It sounds kind of strange. George makes the case. Look, all names sound weird when you first hear them. I mean, you think everyone liked the name Blanche when you first heard it? Such a perfect choice for him to use as an example. Blanche. So Carrie says, we'll put it on the list. And George is so proud. I solve problems. That's what I do. The actress in this scene is Shannon Holt. She's also appeared in ER, that 70s show, and Grace Under Fire. And it looks like now she's doing mostly theater work in LA. And I like her. I think she's got a lot of fun moments in this episode. I love her delivery when she says, it doesn't make you anything. Yeah, she's better than the girlfriend, that's for sure. Okay, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer is in the kitchen making a sandwich, really going to town with that turkey. He says he has a big appetite. He looks in the fridge. He says, you have no mustard. It's in the door. And he doesn't like this yellow stuff. He needs Dijon. He tries the sandwich anyway and spits it out immediately. No, that's Bush League, he says, and he starts walking away. Jerry stops him. Wait, you're going to waste all that turkey? And Kramer says, no, I can't eat it without Dijon. Oh, right, I should really keep more of your favorites on hand, Jerry says very sarcastically. Kramer, senses a vibe. You have a problem with our arrangement? What arrangement? That we can each take what we wish from each other's fridge. Jerry says, yeah, let me know when you get any food in there, and I will. Elaine enters with her head cocked to the side, just bent over. What's with your neck? Jerry asks. She says, it's still killing me from getting that bike down by myself. Jerry says, well, if it's any consolation, I got her number. Elaine's like, I really strained it. Jerry doubts that. He says, maybe you pulled it, twisted it, wrenched it. Did you jam it? Did you squeeze it? She says, why don't you just shut the hell up? She's in so much pain. She says she'll give the bike to the first person who can make the pain go away. Kramer approaches and sympathizes. You're really in pain, huh? Kramer, it's just awful. Well, then he explains that her arterials have constricted. And he tells her to lean forward and relax. He puts his hands around her neck and her shoulders. She's like, what are you doing? Wait a minute. Do you know what you're doing here? And he says it's some kind of shiatsu, that he learned it from a wise man who sells t-shirts outside the World Trade Center. He cups her head in his hands and she starts to panic. From pain will come pleasure. Then he forcefully cranks her head to the side and voila. Oh my God. Wow. The pain is totally gone. And Kramer says, well, my work here is done. Kramer's on his way out and she thanks him again. He says, oh yeah, and you can send that bike over anytime. And he shuts the door. What? What is he talking about? And then Jerry remembers what she said, that you'd give the bike to anyone who could fix your neck. You really think he wants the bike? Oh yeah. But it took him like 10 seconds. Well, that's the most he's worked in 4 months. My take on the scene, of course, I'm just going to cover the Elaine portion. When Jerry starts describing the possibilities of what she may have done to her neck besides strain it, it's funny, but it's also so irritating. But I love her response. So why don't you just go to hell? Speaking of getting older and me seeing things in face, my neck in the last few years, I don't know what the hell is happening. I need to see someone clearly. But I do think my neck is trying to kill me. So I can relate, like when your neck hurts and you cannot turn normally, you just take it for granted how often you do that every day. And it's like just every motion is like you have to turn your shoulders with your neck. And it's awful. It's like some of the worst pain I've ever had. This scene has great physical comedy with both JLD and Michael Richards. I love how aggressive it looks when he cranks her head, and her immediate relief is great. Just a great performance all around by both of them. All right, next we're in George's car. He tells Susan how he thinks they really love the name Soda. She's like, what, are you crazy? They hated it. It's just humoring you. No, George is confident that kid will be named Soda. Susan says, well, I would never name my kid Soda. No, George says, I got great names for our kids. Real original. You ready? And then he signals with his hand and whistles. What is that, sign language? 7. 7 Costanza. You're serious? Yeah, he says it's a beautiful name for a boy or a girl. Susan says, I don't think so. Well, you don't like the name? It's not a name, it's a number. Yeah, it's Mickey Mantle's number, George says. So not only is it an all-around beautiful name, it's also a living tribute. It's awful, I hate it. Well, that's the name. Of course it's escalating. Oh, no, it is not. No child of mine is ever going to be named 7. Oh, George shouts out the window to just stay calm. Don't get all crazy on me. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. George is over and Jerry contemplates the name 7 and makes total fun of it, applying 7 to all the abuses the kid would endure. Well, George stands by it. He defies Jerry to come up with a better name. So Jerry starts looking around his apartment, just picking out objects: mug, ketchup, Bisquick, pimento, gherkin, sauce. All right already. George says this is a very key issue with him. He's had this name for a long time. Oh, Jerry remembers he has to call Christy. Oh, she's the one you met in the antique store. Yeah, she wore this black and white dress with a scoop neck. It was great. She looked like a superhero. I don't know how you do it, George says. I'm not engaged. I love that Jerry always has that to throw in George's face. Kramer enters and proposes a new system for their refrigerator problem. Oh, it's no problem, Jerry says. You can take whatever you want. Kramer says he will, but now he'll be accountable for it. He'll write down what he takes on a piece of paper and put it in this little fishbowl, sort of like a mooching inventory. No, not mooching, he says. At the end of the week, you tally it up and I'll pay the bill. And Kramer's got to run, but he says to Jerry, hey, when Elaine comes by with that bike, just hang on to it for me. Jerry says, I don't know if you're getting that bike, Kramer. Oh, yes, I am. We had a verbal contract. If we can't take each other at our word, all is lost. George gets a Diet Coke from the fridge and Kramer says, oh, yeah, put that on my tab. Next, we're at a restaurant. Jerry is on his date with Christy. They're both still in the lobby waiting for their table. He says the food is atrocious, but the busboys are the best. The maitre d' comes over and asks to take Christy's coat. She says yes. She hands over her coat to him and is wearing the same dress from the antique store. Jerry is quite confused. All right, next we're in Monk's. George is trying to help Jerry figure out why she's wearing the same outfit. I mean, there was only 3 days between encounters. George says perhaps you caught her on the cusp of a new wash cycle. She did laundry the day after she met you, and then she started over. Maybe, Jerry says, but then shouldn't the outfit just show up at the end of the cycle? Maybe she moved it up in the rotation. Why? This is our first date and she's already in reruns? That's very curious. George says, Einstein wore the same outfit every day. Well, yeah, if she splits the atom, I'll let it slide. I have to say, this is one of the best exchanges of the entire series. It's so Seinfeld and just so incredibly funny. I love how earnestly they're talking about this. That's why we love the show. George says he needs to head home. Jerry asks if Susan's budging on the name. George says, yeah, a little bit. George, just because your life is ruined, you don't have to ruin another life, Jerry says. It's Mickey Mantle's number, my idol. How about Mickey? George repeats the name Mickey as if it's totally ridiculous. Mickey. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters and Jerry's at the fridge. Hey, is this your half a can of soda? No, it's yours, he says. I drank my half and I put it in the bowl. Well, you can't buy half a can. Why not? Well, I don't want to have to explain the physics of carbonation here, but the sound that the can makes when you open it is the sound of you buying the whole can. And same goes for this. He holds up an apple with one bite. When you pierce the skin of a fruit, you've bought the whole fruit. If you bite it, you bought it. Okay, Kramer says, I'll make the necessary adjustments. Elaine enters and Kramer says, oh, how's the neck? Nice and loose? She says, look it, you are not getting that bike. I don't even know why you want it. It's a girl's bike. And he points out that they had a verbal contract. And she thinks that he just takes things too literally. It's like saying, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Well, of course, Kramer has a friend who eats horse all the time. She's like, that's not the point. The point is you just can't have the bike. Man, Kramer is really surprised at Elaine. She is the last person he thought would do something like this. He's like, George, yes, even Jerry. He's always put Elaine way up here while the guys are way down here. And now you're all the way down here with them. Elaine's sitting there listening to this. You can see it's affecting her. He closes the door, opens it back up, and she's like, all right. And then we get a classic Kramer sound effect. I can't do it. I was practicing before I recorded. I cannot do that. Okay, whatever. You get the point. If you want to hear it, watch the episode. All right, my take on this scene. I love that we have an Elaine and Kramer storyline. I mean, their relationship, out of all the relationships on the show, I feel like it's the one that's not explored too often, but the small glimpses we get are great. And I was thinking, if I were to assess the relationship, I think Elaine respects Kramer more than she does George, but less than she does Jerry. She's totally aware of how odd he is and his, his tendencies, but I don't think she gets or doesn't allow herself to get as irritated by him as she does with the other guys. She just accepts him as the weirdo. And as far as Kramer goes towards her, I feel like it's a very big brotherly relationship to Elaine for the most part, protective of her, helpful to her, like in this episode. And then we'll see down the line, helping her with shorting out the neighbor's apartment when the alarm is going off. Like, I just feel like he's got this protectiveness, kind of big brotherly protectiveness of Elaine. So in that moment where he guilts her and gilts her very well, by the way. I mean, I think he does such a great job. I just love how she caves. And some great face acting by JLD when Kramer is saying how she's lost that higher pedestal Kramer has always put her on. It's really getting to her. And it's easily one of my favorite moments of the series. First of all, I mean, Michael Richards' performance at all the way down. Okay, next we're in a restaurant. George and Susan are having dinner. He's still trying to convince her about the name. You know, it's a real original, and I absolutely love it. Susan says, well, I'm not sure how original it's going to be. What are you talking about? Susan says she told her cousin Carrie about their fight, and she loved the name. So what are you saying? They're going to name their baby Seven. They're stealing the name? That's my name. I can't believe they're using it. Well, now it's not going to be original, George says. It's going to lose all its cachet. I'm not sure how much cachet it had to begin with. Oh, it's got cachet, baby. Got cachet up the yin-yang. Side note, that is something that we say quite often between me and my husband. If the word cachet comes up, we can't not say, it's got cachet, baby. It's got cachet up the yin-yang. All right, next we are in Elaine's bed. Really quick scene. She's sort of shifting her position, and we hear a crack when she kind of leans up, and she freezes. Her neck is totally seized. Oh, God, Kramer. My take on this, it's funny physicality here, and honestly a little bit triggering for me. I swear that exact motion she does where she kind of like lifts herself up and her neck goes back, that exact motion put me out of commission, God, I guess almost 20 years ago now. Thanks to a yoga injury in my neck. I totally overdid it in my yoga class the evening before, and I think it just, while I was sleeping, it seized up my neck. I mean, it was kind of scary. I could barely move in any direction. It took me a while to figure out like how to even literally crawl out of bed. I could not stand up. Everything hurt, and it was just like shooting pains down my back and my shoulders as well. It was really scary. I had to call into work that day. I remember like I was like hysterical because I was crying. I know this sounds dramatic, and I know it's nowhere near this, but it was the closest I think I've ever felt to being paralyzed. Like I just really could not move for a good, probably couple hours. Like I had to figure out, I was able to get to my phone and call my boss, and she heard my voice and she's like, oh my God, are you like, do I need to call someone? Like, do you, and I was like, no, I don't know. I just can't move right now, but I think it'll be okay. Like I knew I was overreacting a little bit, but I don't know. But I was just in a lot of pain. I was like, I don't think this is like calling an ambulance type emergency, but I certainly super painful and really like just put me in this panic. So I kind of relate to what Elaine's going through here. All right, next we're on the street. Elaine is slowly walking down the street with her stiff neck. She can only position her head at an upward angle. She passes a guy who tells her to watch her step, and she bumps right into a garbage can. And then she hears someone say hi to her, and she realizes it's Christy. We see Elaine's point of view where she can only see Christy's face and nothing below her neck at all. They exchange some niceties, and Christy says, well, it's nice to see you, and walks away. Elaine tries to turn and says, nice to see you. Kramer comes around the corner on the bike. People are yelling out, looking good, nice wheels. Hey, you're riding a girl's bike. He passes by Elaine, and she's trying to get his attention by yelling his name. All right, my take on this scene. This is a fun scene, very clever. It's so funny to me how Elaine sees Christy but cannot see what she's wearing because of the neck. I also have to say, great pain acting here. Elaine in pain. That's another favorite Elaine of mine. And I always love the, hey, you're riding a girl's bike. The kid who says that out the car window always cracks me up. All right, next we're at an apartment building. At the door, George is paying a visit to Carrie and Ken. He says over the intercom, I think we need to talk. All right, next we are in Jerry's apartment. Jerry finds Elaine pounding on Kramer's door. She turns to him. Ow! Is Kramer back from his little joyride yet? Jerry says he hasn't seen him. How's the neck? Elaine says his chiropractic work was a crock. It's worse than it was before. Jerry's surprised that Kramer wasn't an expert in moving pieces of a person's spine around. Oh, and then she tells him, I ran into that girl. What's her name? Christy? Jerry says, you saw her? What was she wearing? Elaine's like, I don't know. I couldn't see because of my neck. He's like, you didn't even get a glimpse? Nothing? She's like, what do you care? He tells her every time I've seen her, she's worn the same outfit. Kramer enters on the bike. Oh, did you have a nice ride? Oh, great ride. That's good because it was your last. And she slams the door and he crashes into it. And Kramer's like, well, we had a deal. And she's like, well, no, you have to give it back. Look at this. And points at her neck. I couldn't even crawl out of bed this morning. Bed, Kramer says, you should be sleeping on a wooden board for at least a week. What? You never told me that. What's common sense? They ask Jerry to settle this, and he's very flattered, but, his friendship to each of them precludes him from getting involved. They need an impartial mediator unfamiliar with the story, whose heart is so dark it cannot be swayed by any pity, emotion, or human compassion of any kind. So we cut to Newman's apartment. Kramer and Elaine are on the couch, and they've told him the whole story. Newman thinks it's quite a conundrum, and he says, you must promise me to abide by my decision no matter how unjust you may think it is. And they agree. All right, let's begin. Ding! Ooh, my cocoa. All right, my take on this scene. It's certainly the strongest Elaine scene of the episode. First of all, maintaining that body position must have been hell for JLD. I bet she got a stiff neck from pretending to have a stiff neck. It just looks like torture to me. I don't know how long she had to keep that position for, but I hope she was stretching in between takes. That interaction with Jerry is so funny. His performance actually cracks me up. I love that he's like, oh, you saw her? What was she wearing? And Elaine's confusion is great too. Like, what do you care? We have a classic moment here, Elaine slamming the door on Kramer so he crashes the bike. And that exchange is so fun. I love he's like, it's common sense to be sleeping on a wooden board. The cut to Newman's apartment is great, but I don't know. I guess I don't know if he's totally an impartial mediator. I mean, he's Kramer's friend, like really close friend, and has a thing for Elaine. Well, okay, now that I think about it, I guess it could be like a circular way for him. Like maybe his friendship and his crush feelings cancel each other out. At any rate, he's a good addition to the episode and the perfect mediator for this dispute. All right, next we're in Carrie and Ken's apartment. George accuses them of stealing the name. It's his name. Carrie points out it's not as if Susan's pregnant. I mean, you've already postponed the wedding. Who knows if you'll get married at all? He says, don't worry about me. I'm not a waffler. I don't waffle. And Ken says, look, we're both big Mickey Mantle fans and we love the name. It's very unusual. George brings it back. What happened to soda? Well, we don't care for soda. You don't care for soda? No, we don't like soda at all. Well, come on. It's bubbly. It's refreshing. Oh, Carrie feels something. She thinks she's going into labor. They get all their stuff and they leave for the hospital. And of course, George follows behind, suggesting other numbers for names. 6, 9, 13. No, 13's no good. 14. All right, next we're at a restaurant. Jerry is on another date with Christy, staring at her, wearing the same dress again. She says, you okay, Jerry? You seem quiet. Yeah, I'm just a little worn out. I know exactly what you mean, she says. Yeah, I'm sure you do. We hear Jerry's voiceover. He wonders what the hell is going on. Is she wearing the same thing over and over, or does she have a closet full of these like Superman? He must unlock this mystery. Then Christy spills wine all over herself. She can't go to the movies like this. Is it okay if we go back to my place so I can change? Change? Yes, I think that's a super idea, Jerry says. All right, next we're in Ken's car. They're on their way to the hospital. Carrie's in labor, doing her breathing. And George is in the back seat. And he just sort of slowly leans forward and starts telling them some total bullshit about how he promised the widow Mantle he would name his kid Mickey. Now is not the best time, George. Well, it's just that I know her. And George, she's in labor. So am I. All right, next we're back in Newman's apartment. Newman is ready to reveal his judgment about the bike, and he recaps each of their cases. Elaine's promise was said in haste, but was it still not a promise? And Kramer's service was provided for compensation, but once the fee is paid, does it not entitle the buyer of some assurance of reliability? These were not easy questions for Newman to answer, but he's made a decision. He says, we'll cut the bike down the middle and give each of you a half. What? Elaine says, this is your solution to ruin the bike? She's like, you know what? Fine. Cut the stupid thing in half. Well, Kramer says, no. Give it to her. I'd rather her have it than see it destroyed. Yeah, Elaine likes that idea. Yeah, go with that. Not so fast, Elaine. Only the bike's true owner would protect it from being destroyed. Kramer, the bike is yours. Newman, you are wise. Elaine can't believe it. It's not fair. I mean, he gets the bike and her neck is still all screwed up. Take it up with the judge, Kramer says, and rides out. My take on this scene, well, just add this to the list of ways Elaine gets screwed over by these dum-dums. I mean, as she points out, her neck is still all fucked up and she loses her bike. Not fair at all. Now, Newman, I'm sure a lot of you knew this. I had no idea at the time, but this is a sort of take on the biblical story of King Solomon. But instead of cutting a baby in half, it's a bike, and that the only true mother or owner wouldn't want to see it harmed. I had no clue about this story as a young Hindu girl, but have since learned about Solomon. I don't even know how I learned about it, but I do know that when I did hear the story of King Solomon, I was like, oh, that sounds like Newman and that bike thing. But I think, I'm pretty sure the Solomon story came out first. All right, next we're in Christy's apartment. They enter and Jerry says, the fortress of solitude. She excuses herself to go change, and he sits down and notices a photo dated in 1992, and she's wearing the same dress. She never changes. She's got to have hundreds of these. Where are they? So he starts snooping around and goes in her closet and is like frantically moving shit around. And she catches him. She's wearing a robe at this point. And she's totally turned off. She's like, you know what? I changed my mind. And he's like, no, put something else on. Let's go out. It's early. And she says, if it's all the same to you, I'd rather just go to bed. And Jerry's like, you know what? I think you're right. And he tries to convince her, I'll sleep over on the couch. And in the morning, she can put something on and we'll walk out together. She's like, I don't think so. And he's like, well, how about you throw something on and walk me to a cab? Get out. Or maybe you can show me what you're wearing tomorrow. I'll help you lay it out on the bed. All right, next we're at the hospital. George is following Carrie and Ken as she's being wheeled to the labor and delivery room, trying to convince them to drop the name still. And she's like, I'm having a baby. Ken says, you're not getting 7. Now get out of here. They go through the doors where George gets cut off by an orderly and says, sorry, only family from this point on. And he says, I'm family. I'm having sex with the cousin. And George yells against the door, 7. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry's on the phone with Christy, trying to convince him to go out with her again. She's, of course, saying no. And he's like, well, you can't break up with me over the phone. I just want to see you. Don't hang up on me. Why do you wear the same dress all the time? Hello. Kramer's in the kitchen looking at a box of pretzels. And he's like, Jerry, you can't expect me to pay for the whole box when you've been snacking on them. Okay, Hobo Joe. Jerry's added up the bill and hands it to Kramer. It's pretty steep. I don't have this kind of cash. And he says, look, I'm good for it. And he's like, yeah, well, until this bill is paid, the food court is closed. And Kramer says, oh, okay, I can get the money in 5 minutes. Don't eat anymore. And he exits. In the next scene, I think it's kind of the tag as well. Elaine is walking down the street. Looks like her neck is healed. She's walking normally. And she looks over and she says, hey, that's my bike. That's my bike. It's Newman riding it down the sidewalk. And he says, no. Kramer sold it to me for $50. He needed some fast cash. Elaine says, nope, it's my bike, and starts chasing him down the road, trying to pull him off. My take on this, it's fine. I don't love it, but I guess we needed the closure to this story. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. She didn't choose the name. The name chose her. What's in a name? For 7, a lifetime of misery, abuse, isolation, and finally, incarceration. Coming this July, the story of how a name can determine the course of someone's life, especially when it's not a name. It's a number. From some of the same folks who brought you The Sixth Sense, The Hateful Eight, and District 9, comes a story based on true events, The Maleficent 7. Born and raised in New York City, 7 Ross Campbell had everything going for her. 2 loving parents, a nice apartment. But once school started for 7 at PS 77, well, things took a turn for the worse. Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt star in this tragic thriller, reprising their partnership from the 1995 hit movie 7. Except Brad Pitt is reprising his role from 7 Years in Tibet, and Morgan Freeman is bringing back his memorable performance of narrator. Watch Pitt and Freeman hunt down Seven after she commits crimes so heinous we can't even describe it in this commercial. But let's just say, the 7 deadly sins have never been so deadly. Well, since the 1995 movie Seven, but since Seven was a big fan of that movie and this is based on true events, the premise still applies. Don't miss your new favorite Morgan Freeman Brad Pitt movie with 7 in the title next summer. The Maleficent 7. Bet you love soda now. And we're back. There weren't really any extras that were worth talking about, so let's move on to Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor to the podcast, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. Okay, up first are Greg's overall thoughts. He says, rewatching this episode almost feels like someone asked AI to write a Seinfeld episode, or if the SNL writers were writing a spoof of the series for a sketch. All of the plots are ridiculously silly and not even based on social commentary, but just dumb ideas thrown together. George coming up with weird baby names, Elaine having an exaggerated injury, Kramer writing down how much he owes Jerry for partial food he's eaten. Jerry is dating a woman who wears the same thing over and over. This is all so dumb, but here we go. I love that comparison that AI wrote it. I just heard that in reference to probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen that I actually had to turn off. My family and I tried to watch the Netflix movie Family Switch. We're always looking for a new Christmas movie to add to our rotation. We have about 5 or 6 classics that we just rotate throughout the season. We don't get sick of them. But at the same time, every year we're like, hey, maybe there's something new we can add to it. It looked strong with Miss Jennifer Garner. I'm a huge Jennifer Garner fan. So I'm kind of like, I'm going to watch whatever she does. But I was reading the reviews because, again, I had to stop the movie. It was that bad. I looked at my kids and they were like, we all just had this look of horror on our faces because it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so one of the reviews said, it feels like they just had AI write the script. Anyway, so I liked this comparison, Greg. I agree. You'll hear my final thoughts in a few minutes here on the pod, but I agree that it's super silly. We do get more broad as Seinfeld goes on. I mean, I think you'll agree with that. But I kind of disagree. I like Jerry's plot because, I don't know, that just feels very Seinfeld to me. That one doesn't bother me very much. I actually like Kramer and his whole mooching inventory system because I feel like that probably out of all of them is the least out there of the plots. But I totally see what you're saying. And I do wish that they gave Elaine more than just her poor neck. And they really had to try and squeeze a lot of story out of that, even though it's not a lot of story. But I'll get more into that with my final thoughts. But again, we're basically on the same page here. All right, next are Greg's favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, Elaine does some great neck acting here, followed by great injury relief acting. Yes, I agree. This is about as good as it gets for JLD in this episode, as she is given so little of what little there is to begin with. Absolutely. I just kind of touched on that. It's like, okay, she's got a stiff neck, but yeah, she pulls it off. JLD is incredible with physicality and all kinds of physical comedy. And I have to agree. I mean, Elaine in pain. I mean, just imagine if she was in Spain in a plane. Anyway, for what she's given, JLD does pull it off really well. I totally agree. My favorite Elaine moment out of all of this is when she asks Kramer if he's enjoying the bike, then slams the door and he crashes into it. It's just a clever bit of humor in this whole dumb scenario. Well, we are on the same page there, spoiler alert. All right, next is Greg's scene swap idea. Ooh, he says, I could swap this whole episode. It's weak. Oh, burn. And finally, Greg's extra thoughts. He says, was this just a list of ideas they had that they decided to get rid of in one swoop? It's all so subpar for the show, and this season in particular where nothing is connected. Yeah, I feel like you're onto something there. It does feel really discombobulated. And as you heard when we came back from break, I didn't really go into any extras because there were none to speak of. They always have the notes about nothing, but it was weak. I'm like, well, clearly no one wanted to talk about this episode. There was nothing interesting about it. Whenever an episode doesn't have like an inside look or something like behind the scenes, I'm like, okay, this, and even in their opinion, I believe that shows they're not super fond of it. There was a deleted scene, I guess I could have mentioned, where we see, and it's odd because all of a sudden Jerry's there. So Jerry, George, Susan, Carrie, and Ken, they're all in the park on a bench, and they're looking at a little stroller, and they're like, oh, look at little Seven. They're just like doting on Seven, the baby. And George, of course, is all pissed off about it. And then, so that goes on for a little bit. And then Jerry looks up and sees Christy, and he's like, Christy, let me see what you're wearing. And like runs off. It's bad. I mean, it's like, holy crap, it's bad. Totally see why I think that was supposed to maybe be the original tag of the episode. But yeah, we are very much on the same page. Thank you so much, Greg. We love hearing your thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I mean, I can't think of anything better than her closing the door on Kramer when he's riding his bike through Jerry's apartment. It's fantastic, very funny. A close second would be the physical comedy when Kramer fixes her neck. I mean, JLD is doing the work here, not Michael Richards. It's a little secret from the biz where when you see something like this, the person doing the motion is the opposite of who you think is actually doing the motion. So Kramer's not really doing anything here. Or I should say Michael Richards isn't. Like, that's all Julia Louis-Dreyfus kind of cranking her neck to the side. So it's done very well. I'm sure that was all choreographed, but I really enjoyed it. And my final notes of the episode. I mean, this is a pretty weak episode for Elaine. There are some fun parts, definitely, like the ones I just mentioned, but they sort of painted Elaine into this kind of stiff neck corner, for lack of a better phrase, where she's kind of limited, in her ability to participate too much. I mean, I would have loved to have seen her be more involved with Jerry's plot, which his plot is so quintessential Seinfeld. Like, you can't get more Seinfeld than that. It's simple, but it's funny. Now, I will say, with such a fun partnering of Elaine and Kramer, and even keeping that whole neck thing, I guess I don't mind that. We just could have used more of them together. I also think that bike is so ugly. I mean, and I never understood, even when I saw it originally, I was like, it's a little girl's bike. Is Elaine actually planning on riding it around, or was it just to be like on display at her place? I don't know. I mean, it's fine for a little girl, of course. I mean, it literally is a little girl's bike, but it's always confused me why Elaine wanted it so badly. It just baffles me as a grown woman. Like, I don't think she would ride it. So what's the point? But whatever. Just one of those things we have to accept. So yeah, overall, this is a very middle of the road episode for Elaine. It's not quite an, oh shit, we forgot to give Elaine a storyline. Let's just put something in. But I definitely think her storyline is the weakest of the episode. And plus, again, that bike is as ugly as the dress that Christy keeps on wearing. Yeah, I said it. I think that dress is super ugly too. Oh man, I really, really bashed Christy in this episode. My feelings are my feelings. Not going to apologize. And I think that's all I can say about The Seven. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me any thoughts, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.